He utterly hated Olivia de Havilland. Now we know the reason why. In the golden era of Hollywood, when studio lots glittered with star power and silver screen legends walked among mortals, few rivalries burned as intensely yet quietly as the one between Van Heflin and Joan Crawford. Their story, largely forgotten by modern audiences, reveals a fascinating clash of egos, artistic philosophies, and personal demons that defined an era when the camera captured far more than just performances. It immortalized the very real tensions simmering beneath Hollywood's polished surface. Van Heflin was never meant to be a leading man in the traditional sense. Standing at a modest height with sharp, angular features that suggested intelligence rather than classic handsomeness, he carved his niche as Hollywood's thinking man's actor. Born Emmett Evan Heflin Jr. in December 1908 in Walters, Oklahoma, he grew up far removed from the glamour of Tinseltown, shaped instead by the harsh realities of the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression. His journey to Hollywood was unconventional, marked by years of stage work in New York and a determination to prove that talent could triumph over traditional leading man looks. By the early 1940s, Heflin had established himself as a character actor of exceptional range, winning an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor in 1942 for his performance in Johnny Eager. Unlike many of his contemporaries who relied on charm or physical presence, Heflin brought a raw authenticity to his roles, an everyman quality that made audiences believe every word he spoke. He was the actor's actor, respected by peers but often overlooked by the public in favor of more conventionally handsome stars. Van Heflin's personal life reflected the complexity he brought to his performances. In September 1942, he married Frances Neal, a talented actress whose own career had shown promise in films throughout the late 1930s. Their union seemed built on mutual respect and shared artistic sensibilities. Together, they welcomed 3 children: daughters Vanna, born in 1944, and Kathleen, born in 1948, followed by son Tracy, born in 1951. Heflin was known among friends as a devoted father who valued family stability over Hollywood glamour, often choosing to spend evenings at home rather than attending the endless parade of industry parties. Frances understood the demands of the acting profession, having experienced them herself, and she became Heflin's anchor in an industry known for destroying marriages. She managed their household with grace, raising their children while supporting her husband's career through its inevitable peaks and valleys. The Heflin home in Los Angeles was described by visitors as warm and unpretentious, filled with books rather than industry memorabilia, a place where intelligent conversation mattered more than celebrity gossip. Yet beneath the surface of this seemingly stable family life, Heflin wrestled with his own insecurities. He was acutely aware that Hollywood valued appearance as much as ability, and he often felt underestimated despite his Oscar win. Friends recalled that he could be moody and withdrawn, particularly when passed over for roles that went to more conventionally attractive actors. He drank moderately but consistently, using alcohol as a buffer against the industry's constant judgments and rejections. This was the Van Heflin who, in 1950, found himself cast opposite Joan Crawford in a psychological thriller that would test every ounce of his professional composure. Crawford, by then a force of nature in Hollywood, was at the height of her post-Warner Brothers career renaissance. She had reinvented herself as a dramatic actress of formidable power, winning an Oscar for Mildred Pierce and commanding both respect and fear throughout the industry. Working with Joan Crawford was like being caught in a hurricane, Heflin later confided to a close friend. She didn't just act in a scene, she consumed it, devoured it, and left nothing for anyone else. Their conflict began almost immediately during rehearsals. Crawford arrived with precise ideas about every moment of every scene, complete with blocking suggestions, lighting preferences, and strong opinions about how her co-stars should deliver their lines. Heflin, accustomed to a more collaborative approach, found her methods suffocating. Crawford was a perfectionist who demanded control, having learned early in her career that only by controlling every aspect of her image could she survive in the cutthroat world of Hollywood. She arrived on set hours early, her makeup and wardrobe meticulously prepared, every gesture and expression practiced before the cameras rolled. She expected her co-stars to match her level of preparation and to defer to her experience. Van Heflin, however, believed in spontaneity and organic development of character. He preferred to discover moments within scenes rather than manufacture them in advance. "The woman treats acting like accounting," Heflin complained privately. "Every emotion calculated, every tear scheduled. Where's the humanity in that?" Their philosophical differences manifested in endless takes and tense discussions. Crawford would insist on repeating scenes until they matched her internal vision, while Heflin grew increasingly frustrated with what he saw as mechanical precision replacing genuine feeling. Crawford, for her part, found Heflin infuriatingly resistant to direction and collaboration. She had worked with some of Hollywood's greatest leading men, Clark Gable, Spencer Tracy, James Stewart, and most had either welcomed her input or possessed enough star power to stand their ground diplomatically. Heflin did neither. "He's talented, I'll grant him that," she told her longtime friend and costume designer. "But he acts as if preparation is beneath him, as if real actors should just wing it. That's not artistry, that's laziness." The tension extended beyond artistic differences into personal territory. Crawford was known for her fierce ambition and her habit of competing with everyone, including her co-stars. She would arrive at the studio before dawn and stay late, ensuring she was seen as the most dedicated person on any production. She cultivated relationships with directors, producers, and studio executives, wielding influence that extended far beyond her performances. Heflin viewed this behavior with barely concealed contempt. "She's not an actress," he remarked bitterly to a fellow actor over drinks one evening. "She's a politician in pancake makeup. Everything's a calculation with her. Every friendship a transaction." The comment, like many Hollywood secrets, eventually found its way back to Crawford, deepening the rift between them. Their on-set dynamic became increasingly toxic. Crew members dreaded scenes featuring both actors, knowing they would likely face a long day of retakes punctuated by icy silences and passive-aggressive comments. Crawford would subtly position herself to dominate the frame, using her considerable knowledge of camera angles and lighting to her advantage. Heflin, aware of what she was doing but unwilling to engage in the same games, would retreat into his performance, becoming even more internal and withdrawn. "I refuse to compete with someone who thinks acting is a blood sport," he told his wife. "I'm there to tell a story, not win a war." But Crawford interpreted his refusal to engage as disrespect, and in her world, respect was everything. She had clawed her way from poverty to stardom, surviving personal scandals and professional setbacks that would have destroyed lesser talents. She demanded recognition for her achievements and bristled at anyone who seemed to dismiss them. Off camera, their animosity was barely contained. At studio gatherings, they maintained a veneer of professionalism, but those who knew them could sense the tension. Crawford would speak to Heflin only when absolutely necessary, her responses clipped and formal. Heflin would excuse himself from her vicinity at the earliest opportunity, seeking out colleagues he actually enjoyed. The contrast between his warm interactions with others and his cold civility toward Crawford spoke volumes. The feud reached its peak during a particularly challenging scene that required emotional vulnerability from both actors. Crawford, as usual, had prepared extensively and delivered her lines with technical perfection. Heflin, however, felt the scene lacked genuine emotion and asked the director if they could try a different approach. Crawford's expression hardened. "Perhaps if you'd bothered to prepare properly," she said coolly, "you wouldn't need to improvise." The comment landed like a slap, and Heflin's face flushed with anger. "Or perhaps," he replied with forced calm, "if you'd allow yourself to actually feel something instead of performing feelings, we'd have a scene worth filming." The set fell silent. Even the hardened crew members, accustomed to Hollywood egos, seemed shocked by the open hostility. The director called an early lunch, and neither actor spoke to the other for the remainder of the production. They completed their scenes with professional competence but zero warmth, and their on-screen chemistry, or lack thereof, reflected the genuine animosity between them. Years later, when asked about his most difficult professional experiences, Heflin would mention the Crawford production with visible discomfort. "She's a remarkable actress," he would say carefully. "Remarkable and relentless and absolutely exhausting to work with. I learned a great deal from her, mostly about what kind of actor I never wanted to become." Crawford, when Crawford's name came up in interviews, would dismiss Heflin with a wave of her hand. "Talented but troubled," she would say. "Too much ego for someone who never quite became a star." The irony was that both were right about each other. Crawford was calculating and controlling, her artistry born from fierce discipline and unwavering determination. Heflin was spontaneous and resistant to manipulation, his best work emerging from freedom and organic discovery. They represented two opposing approaches to the craft of acting, both valid, both capable of brilliance, but completely incompatible when forced together. Van Heflin continued working steadily throughout the 1950s and early 1960s, delivering powerful performances in films like Shane, where he played Joe Starrett, the homesteader whose dignity and strength anchored the film's moral center. He worked in theater, returning to his stage roots when film roles proved unsatisfying. He remained married to Frances until her death in 1967, their union lasting 25 years despite the pressures of Hollywood life. On July 23, 1971, while on a business trip to Hollywood, Van Heflin suffered a heart attack and died in his swimming pool. He was 62 years old, his death marking the end of an era when character actors could build significant careers on talent rather than looks. He left behind a body of work that showcased remarkable range and depth, performances that continue to resonate with audiences who value authenticity over artifice. His feud with Joan Crawford became a footnote in Hollywood history, occasionally mentioned in biographies, but largely overshadowed by his professional achievements and her own legendary career. Yet for those who witnessed it firsthand, the rivalry remained a powerful reminder that even in the dream factory of Hollywood, human emotions, pride, jealousy, artistic integrity could not be scripted or controlled. Two great talents, forever at odds, each bringing out both the best and worst in the other. Retry